Let me just start here this morning. Good morning, everybody. And it's good to have you here. Local 392, thank you for hosting us here. We lovingly call this the VO studio. VO, not voiceover. It actually stands for Vox Operantium, and that is a Latin phrase for the voice of the worker. And that's what we try to do here. We try to amplify just the message of everyday working folk. You know, John, the way you came into our attention was I came into the building one day and there was a sign in the window. And the sign said, I think basically, help, John needs a kidney.
Yep. Yeah.
And I asked Bill about it, and Bill told me about you, and I thought, wow, if we can't use the bully pulpit of 12.5 million working folk to at least get the message out, then what good are we? So that's what brought us here today. Of course, meeting you, we find out about you gentlemen, and it's quite a story. If you don't mind, just real quick, let's just go around and kind of a real quick who you are, what you do briefly, and then we'll come back and we'll start right about there.
Great. My name is Bill Fraley. I am the business manager for the Plumbers, Pipe Fitters, and Mechanical Equipment Service, Local Union 392 here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the president of the Cincinnati AFL-CIO.
Excellent, yeah.
Hi, I'm Kevin Reynolds. I'm marketing manager for Cincinnati Public Radio, and I am a kidney recipient.
Yeah, absolutely.
John Skirvin, plumber at Local 392. Also on the kidney transplant list.
Yep.
It's Kevin Skirvin, John's brother. I drive a delivery truck for a local distributing company, and I'm also a kidney transplant recipient, and things are going well.
Yeah.
And Jason Skirvin, the middle brother, and I work in the financial services industry, and I'm a transplant recipient within the last 8 months, and making a speedy recovery and feeling well.
I'm Sharon Ryelman, and I'm the recipient coordinator for John, and also the waitlist coordinator as well for Christ Hospital.
My name's Trisha Monson. I'm a kidney donor coordinator at Christ Hospital.
And I'm Brian Griffin. I have the pleasure of working with Mr. Fraley here at the Cincinnati AFL-CIO. And John, I think, if you don't mind, I want to come back to you real quick. Obviously, John, Kevin, Jason, when I heard your story, I was, very much moved to try to do something. But when you told me about your family, it was like, oh my God, this is certainly something that we should step up and, go the extra mile to try to get this message out. So if you gentlemen don't mind, tell me a little bit, when did you know this situation? How did you come to know this situation, each of you?
Well, our dad, before he passed away, he was diagnosed with the polycystic kidney disease. He eventually lost his battle with cancer. So I guess at that time, the polycystic wasn't really focused on. And then me personally, I wasn't diagnosed until with the polycystic in my late 20s, maybe 28, 29 years of age. I had already known that my brother Jason had it from an accident playing football at Georgetown, roughly 21 years old.
Yeah, it was 1999. I got hurt in a college football game and broke 3 ribs and lacerated my kidney. And they found out at that point through some scanning that I had polycystic kidney disease.
Wow. Do you think there's a possibility that finding it at that point might have helped save your life?
It certainly started the treatment. I was always in really good physical condition. Obviously, growing up being an athlete and playing in college, but I always had high blood pressure when I went in for physicals. And they, always thought, well, he must be nervous about getting a physical. But it turns out, it's. I don't think that's something that they normally just look for on a physical. But once the injury occurred, they were able to identify it and start treatment.
Kevin, how did you come to know, or was it just next in line?
It was kind of next in line, but it was also, like you said, with the high blood pressure.
What's that?
So that's kind of one of the first things you really notice. You don't really have any other symptoms that you feel or know about.
So you found out first,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then you, John, or you, Kevin?
No, I found out next. I had actually hurt my back and went to have I believe it was an MRI done, and then they called me. The doctors called me 3 days later, and said your back's fine, but we do see cysts on your kidneys. But I had, in the back of my mind, I had already thought that that my dad had it. One of my younger brothers has polycystic, so it's more, that I probably have it as well. So it was a kind of a shock, but not really. But
Ladies, if you don't mind, one of you field this. Pretend we don't know anything, which has the benefit of being true. Polycystic fibrosis. What are we talking about? Is it the normal cause of a kidney failure? Where does this play in the overall?
The most common reason for kidney failure is actually diabetes. That being said, polycystic kidney disease tend to run in families. And what it is just these cysts build up, and they actually stop the kidney from functioning by causing scar tissue and everything. And you had to have your kidneys removed because they got so big. And
Correct.
The cysts will pop, and when they do pop, they're very painful.
yeah.
Yes, very painful.
Very painful.
Kevin, is this what you were dealing with?
That's how it started with me. I was diagnosed with polycystic kidneys. I was being monitored, and I was having a lot of pain, and the doctor was just assuming it was the cysts that were popping, and that was certainly part of it. Then they did an MRI to get a better handle on things and discovered that amongst all of those cysts, I had cancer growing in both kidneys. So I was fairly quickly after that had both of them removed. The trick with that is because it was cancer, and justifiably so, like in my head I get this, in my heart I was furious about it, but you have to prove that you're cancer free for 5 years before you can get a transplant.
Oh.
So I lived without kidneys on dialysis for 5 years to prove I was getting screened every 6 months. There was no reoccurrence. So finally, at the end of 5 years, I was able to get a transplant.
Now, Kevin, you and I, we ran together pretty much literally every day.
Yes.
In and around 80, 81, 82.
Yep.
And I don't remember any of this. When did this?
This didn't come till much later. So while I was in college, my dad had chronic kidney stones, and back then they didn't have all of the technology that they have now. So at one point he had to go to, to Boston, to a hospital where they basically cut open his kidney and suctioned out the stones. And his urologist pulled me aside at one point, and said, these run in families, so get ready for it. So when I first had a problem, which was, I was about 38, 39, I just assumed it was kidney stones. So I went to a doctor about it, and that's when they discovered the cysts were growing. And that's when all the fun began.
So would they even put you on the transplant list until you were 5 years
No.
clear of cancer? You weren't on the list at all
So
until
you weren't on the list or anything.
No, I was fortunate that I had several people who were willing to get tested to donate for me, but they wouldn't even test them until I got my 4.5 years clear cancer screen. We tried, we asked, at like 3 years, everything had been going great. So my doctor said, can we start? And they went, no, because I had so much cancer that had built up that they were not going to cut me a break.
Bill, how did this come onto your radar? How did 392 get involved?
We got involved because John is a member of ours. He's a plumber journeyman, works for multiple of our contractors, and just through word of mouth more than anything, you've met John a little bit and his brothers, and they're not the kind of guys that go
That's
out
what I was thinking,
and throw personal information out like that and look for any kind of attention or sympathy or anything. So he was having discussions with some of our other plumbers and on the job sites, and eventually it worked its way back to the Union Hall where we heard about it. And Jim Hairball Harris, who is one of our business agents, plumber business agent, grabbed a hold of it and said, hey, John's got this going on. Is there anything we can do to help? So we sat down and we brainstormed. We thought, you know what, if we can't use the resources that we have available to us to help our members in a time of need, a time of need when you know that it is truly a situation where they need the help, then what good are we as an organization and primarily as human beings? To me, that's what I was raised to believe and how I feel in my heart. And if I'm the head of this organization and I don't do it through the organization with the available resources that I have now, then when are we going to do it? So he brought the issue to us. We brainstormed on ideas. We had some yard signs made up. We got them out. We put the word out to our membership and to the community at large through the AFL-CIO. Anybody that wanted a yard sign, we had people driving them out and putting them in their yards, getting the word out. We talked to some of the reporters at some of the local TV stations in hopes that as we move along through this, there's a chance to get the word out even further, utilizing them. So we consider ourselves as maybe the communications part of this because we have the ability and we're going to put it out there as loudly and as often as we can so that people like me, I was never aware of any of this and how this whole transplant program worked. I happened to be driving through Indianapolis, and believe it or not, there was a semi truck, like a dirt semi. The guy had a tarp on it, and on the tarp it said, Sharon needs a kidney, please call this phone number. And it was an 800 number. I called it while I was driving through Indianapolis because it hit me that hard. And I said, what do I have to do? Well, unbeknownst to me, I was going to have to go back to Indianapolis to do the testing and everything else. And same thing with John, I called, but unfortunately I've got cancer that I'm dealing with, so it knocks me out of the list. But if we can get the word out to people that don't know or maybe have never known anybody that's had a transplant possibility, if they'll get tested, I think a lot of the fear out there is not just as a donor, how do I live if I give up one of my kidneys and my other one happens to go bad at a later date, but the fear of the unknown, not knowing what the procedure is, the pain that's involved, the recovery time, the way it's going to affect you and your family personally, much less the recipient. So we decided, if we're going to do this, let's do this big and let's get the word out there. And just from me to you, just know we're behind you 100% going forward, whatever it takes. If we have the availability here at Local 392, we're going to do everything we can do to help you out. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So that's probably a good segue to the reason we got you here today. It wasn't just the donuts. How big is this? What are we talking about? This whole, first of all, let's just start with, look at this right here. We got 4 gentlemen who are all in the process of needing a kidney. Now, that's just a kidney. I got a brother that works for 3M, and he brags about how many different parts they can replace. So kidneys alone, what does that represent as far as the need?
Well, nationally, there's about almost 118,000 in the United States that
right now
currently need a kidney. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that number rarely changes dramatically.
Right.
It may go down to 110. It'll go up to 120 because as people come off the list, we got more and more going on the list.
Yeah, so just last year in 2020, 36,000 people were added to the kidney list, just the kidneys.
Now, there's, of course, the ability to do live donating.
Yes.
But now, isn't it also a thing where once I, am called home and don't need them anymore, that you can still use them?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't that seem like an easy way to go about this? I mean, for a moment, let me just ask the obvious. Once I pass on to my great reward, which I hope I do, I think I've lived it, why wouldn't I do that? So what do you see with that kind of thing? How do you guys see that in the market of ideas? What goes on with that? What do you all do to make people aware of that? That one, you can, and two, you should. How does that work?
think it's just a lot of education to the community. So, a survey was done and 90% of adults said, oh yeah, they support, organ donation, but only 60% are registered as donors. So I think it's just partnering with Life Center, and just getting the word out there. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about organ donation.
What are some of the misconceptions? I'm curious.
There are. So I'm a volunteer for Life Center. So I will, in a normal year when we're allowed to go out, I'll work information tables at fairs and festivals and all of that. And the stories I've heard, and it's so frustrating because even if you sign up, when you get your driver's license, that's the easiest, best way to do it. You say you're going to be a donor, it's on your license, you're into the register.
That's when I did it.
Yep. So one of the things that we ask folks is, are you a registered donor? And if they say no, we just try to find out why. And I've heard everything from, you wouldn't want my organs, to which my response always is, I lived 5 years on a machine because I had no kidneys at all. Believe me, don't assume that. A lot of them proclaim that their religion doesn't allow it.
I hear that.
It's now factual that all major religions in the world consider this the final act of love, and that you should be an organ donor. The other part of the equation is that even if you are registered as an organ donor, there are a lot of things that have to go right, as they know, before that transplant will ever happen. They're just not going to take it because you've offered it. There has to be matches of a bazillion types, and whether that's living or a deceased donor. But what we try to get across to people is you're not going to need them. And we're not just talking major organs here. I mean, we are talking, hearts and lungs and kidneys, but corneas, skin, bone for fire victims, things like that, that whether you've had cancer or not, or whether you've lived a healthy life or not, can still be used. Leave that up to the medical experts. Don't just assume because you might have partied in college or whatever that you're now discounted.
And we did.
And we did.
Yes.
I think a lot of those responses come out of some combination of fear and ignorance. And that's what we're constantly battling, and that's why Life Center exists to try to explain and educate. That's why we've been fortunate in the Cincinnati area. 2 of our TV news anchors have been altruistic kidney donors, which is like
Really? Who?
Yeah.
Lisa Cooney, who has retired, and Tanya O'Rourke.
Wow.
And when they do that, I mean, you can't buy that kind of awareness and education because they'll take you through the whole process, which it's a staggering process for both the patient and the donor. But people still have, and I say this somewhat jokingly, but pop culture hasn't done us any favors with bathtubs full of ice cubes and people stealing kidneys for whatever this mysterious black market is. None of that happens. That's not going on. And we can talk about living donors later, but everybody, you can survive it. It's okay. So there's still, even though this is not new, they've been doing transplants for a long time, there is still a lot of misconceptions and fear and ignorance about it.
Well, question, trying to get a time frame here. Just learned you had a mandatory 5-year stand down before you were even allowed to get listed.
Right.
Jason, from the time you found out to the time you were actually received the call, how long?
Well, that's, I'm trying to think here. I knew, over the last 20 years, my kidney function has progressively gotten worse. And, meeting with my team of doctors, it got to the point where I had 6 or 7 hospital stays last year, starting in January. And, the kidneys I had became problematic to the point where the best option of treatment was to remove them. And then at that point, continue on dialysis until everything lined up to receive a transplant. And I actually knew the donor, so we were able to coordinate that on the timeline, and that timeline moved because of some of the other.
So somebody stepped up
Yes,
and gave you a kidney,
that's correct.
and you knew that person.
Yes.
Was this a friend?
It was a relative of my wife's.
Wow. And it just so happened that it lined up.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes.
At what point in that process, when do you put them on the transplant list? What does their kidney function have to be to
Well,
actually hit the list?
To actually be on the list and to get time, as it's called time on the list,
Yeah.
your GFR has to be under 20, or 20 or under, I should say.
And
So
that's the
it's
kidney
to help
function.
That's
me
the
with
kidney
that.
function, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
There you go.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we use all these buzzwords and acronyms.
Yeah. Kevin,
that's the actual
how long were you on the list?
Not long.
Really?
I got really lucky.
And it was not a friend that stepped
It
up.
was a friend.
It was a friend
It
that
was,
stepped up.
at least I've known this girl for 21 years, probably. The wife of one of my lifelong friends from childhood.
Wow. God bless him.
To me, that's the most incredible thing is
Yeah.
how you hear these stories and how people that you've known your whole life are actually that close to being a match and actually match up with you when it takes all of these things that have to go right medically and just the whole blood work and everything, and then it ends
Yeah.
up being somebody that you know that
Yeah.
well. So and then
What does it take to get a match? I'm sorry, I
No.
gotta ask a question.
yeah.
Yeah.
What does it take to get a match? If I want to see if I'm a match for John, for example, what do I go through? And how do they make
Buddy,
that work?
that's George.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so, basically that person would just need to reach out to a coordinator. So like it's my number that's on the signs. So, that's kind of the first step is just voicing that that's something that you're interested in. Then there's some paperwork, just a brief medical screening to make sure there's nothing glaring that would absolutely rule somebody out from moving forward. And from there, it's a blood test to see if you're a match. Now, there's more after that, but it's just a blood draw.
Primarily your blood type?
So, blood type is the first step. But even with that, I always tell people don't get so hung up on blood type. The most important thing is that we have a nice, healthy, willing volunteer. So, yes, you do have to be a compatible blood type to be able to directly donate to someone. Then we also look at what we call HLA typing, protein markers on the blood cells, kind of what makes you you. And then last but not least, we look at a cross match. So making sure that the person that we're giving it to doesn't have any antibodies or fighter cells, so to speak, against that donor's protein markers. So there's a lot of things that have to line up. But going back to the blood type thing, I think sometimes, again, people rule themselves out versus letting us, because there's also, let's say somebody's perfectly healthy, but they don't match the person they want to directly give to. We have an exchange program. And I mean, there's just all sort of options out there. You can go in as a pair, so you're linked and your surgeries typically happen the same day still. You can advance donate. So donate on your timeline whenever you're ready, and then he would get a voucher, basically to redeem after, that person donates. So, my biggest thing is, don't rule yourself out. Just call if you're interested. And there's never any obligation. It's confidential. I think that's another fear people have is, once I start, I can't stop. And that's not true.
Well, there are some blood types that you just would not work, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm A positive. Is that something that gets me past the gate?
John, what's your blood type? I don't remember.
We might have
I believe it's
a
A+.
I think you're
Yeah,
A,
I'm
yeah.
A
I think you're A.
All right, so
basically-
I passed that.
Right, he can have an A or an O. So the O is the universal donor, but
Okay.
an O can only have an O. So he can actually have an A or an O.
Wow.
But again, we also had the National Kidney Registry that if, say somebody steps forward and they're cross-match positive or they're a B, you guys can go into the National Kidney Registry as well. And that we utilize that a lot for people to get living donor
So
transplants.
does John have any candidates on deck, so to speak, at this point?
We're still looking.
Okay.
Still looking.
A question. Jason had someone they knew step up. Kevin had someone they knew stepped up. If I'm remembering correctly, yours was not.
Yeah, no, I did have someone.
So you knew her.
Yeah, I actually, so before I went and had my first kidney removed, I threw a party, which is what you do, right? I don't know what I'm going to drink
Makes
again.
sense to me.
I knew I had cancer, so you start thinking
Yeah.
those things. So throw this party, and a friend of mine. At that point, we've been friends for probably 8-10 years. Had a couple of beverages and came up and said, "Tell me again what's going to happen." So I explained the whole process of, because I was going to Nashville for the first kidney because they were going to try to salvage some of it. That didn't happen. So then the second one, I just said, we need to take out because I just don't want cancer in my body. We need to start that 5-year clock. And she said, all right. And I explained it. She goes, okay, I'll be your donor. And I said, I can't even contemplate that right now because I know it's 5 years away. She went to her doctor and said, I need a physical to be a kidney donor. And he goes, you're going to be, she goes, well, not now, like in 5 years. And her doctor was a bit puzzled, but doctor told her that her BMI was off. She had gotten a little heavy and probably wouldn't qualify. So again, having zero knowledge of whether she's a match in any way, she joined Jenny Craig. She lost 104 pounds in 1 year. She became like this poster child for Jenny Craig. She joined a gym. She got herself healthy. She was going on a mission trip for her church. She wouldn't accept the vaccines until she found out how they impacted her kidney, even though that was still 3+ years away. And my biggest fear at that point was she wasn't going to match after all. I mean, she was going to be in better shape. She was going to be healthier. But I had 3 people test for me. 2 of them matched. And Susie was the best match of them. And she called me at work one day and said, guess what we're going to do?
Yeah.
And then, then you start the real heavy lifting of, like, she got the most intense physical of her life because they are not going to do this, and they will back me up on this. There's not going to be any progress towards a transplant if the potential donor would in any way be negatively affected. So the best thing to tell everybody who's watching and listening to this, kidneys are redundant organs. You've got 2 for reasons that we don't understand other than one to share. So you live a long, perfect, healthy life with just one. In the unlikely event, after this massive physical and all of that, you donate a kidney and then you wind up with kidney trouble, you get like the monopoly pass to the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
You go,
That's awesome.
you go right to the top because you've been a donor and they're going to do everything they can to make sure you're not negatively impacted. So that's a huge bonus. Susie knows in the event something should happen, she goes right to the top.
Now, we invited her. She couldn't make it today, but but how's she doing? Tell me about her life since then.
Yeah, and hopefully their donors could back us up as well. It is harder on the donor than the recipient at the very beginning. And it makes total sense if you just go, oh, they're losing something that they're used to having. I'm getting something that I really need. So I felt better immediately.
Yeah.
I suddenly had an organ I hadn't had for 5 years. Like, my body was yippee-yi-yaying. Like,
Yeah.
she has to adjust to that. But she was back at work in 2 weeks. They do it predominantly now, I don't know if everybody, but it was arthroscopically. So they make a few little punctures, one little thing, and they one little incision, and they pull it out. So it's not the big slice
not
across
the cut in half open
Yep.
up anymore.
So that speeds up the recovery.
Does this sound familiar, gentlemen?
Yeah.
I had a little different experience personally, but
Tell me about yours.
well, I've got a, I guess, what is it, the midline incision where they took both of my kidneys out.
Right.
And and I've got one on this side where they got into some hernia mesh and then had to cut the other side to put it in the other side.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh, I've got big ones from taking mine out because
Yeah.
mine were so huge from the cysts and all of that.
Yeah.
But my donor just my donor
exactly.
has none of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Frankensteinian down here. But,
yeah.
but I'm still here.
Oh, go ahead.
So what about the two donors that you know? How are their lives
My donor's
now?
doing great.
Everything, they're both fully back.
She
doing
gets
what they
up
were
at
doing.
4 o'clock every morning and works out.
Yep.
And she's a school teacher, so she's off now, enjoying the summer. But
Are you trying not to upset her?
Jason, what about you?
Yeah, my daughter just got done with a 10-day hike to the Rockies.
Wow.
Yeah, so-
Can they
Yeah.
play the piano?
Yeah.
Just make the same joke, yeah.
Yeah.
I
well,
guess, and real quick, just follow-up question. Are there any precautions or anything that a living donor has to consider after they make the donation, living out the rest of their days? Is there anything that they can and cannot do? Is there, if they were like that, if they were climbing the Rockies before they had the donation, or if they were partiers, if they like to do whatever?
They need to stay hydrated, which
stay
you should do with
hydrated.
1 or 2
Yeah,
kidneys.
whether- yeah,
so.
whether-
Yeah.
That's
But
really the main
no
thing.
other
is
no
Yeah.
other major lifestyle changes once you recover.
No food
from the
changes,
surgery?
no-
The only
change.
thing is the AFL
Yeah,
products.
I mean,
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing we tell kidney donors is we want them to stay away from what we call NSAIDs, which are your anti-inflammatory drugs. So your Advil, Levothyroxine. We want them to use Tylenol.
It's processed through the liver, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But that's probably the biggest thing. But, I think one of the common misconceptions is, my life is going to be drastically impacted and negatively affected by kidney donation. And I have never had a donor come back and tell me anything like that. If anything, they report they have a better quality of life. Even though they don't medically gain out of it, they mentally, emotionally gain. And they're more aware of their health. So they actually tend to take a little better care of themselves. And there's even studies out there to suggest that they end up living longer because they're more aware of their health and taking care of themselves, and they see their primary care. And
Yeah.
Well, let's flip the script on that question. What type of changes, what type of things, what type of awareness, what type of foods, beverages, anything in your lives, Jason, Kevin, what's changed?
I haven't changed much. I try to drink, at least a gallon of water a day or something like that, but it's not like I can't drink a beer or something, or I can't, I try to eat healthy, but I don't always. And so far, so good. My blood work's been great. Everything's going good.
Jason, say?
Yeah, I do, kind of monitor the amount of protein I eat, but and that's and just really drink a lot more water, and just kind of focus on that. To make sure I try to get 3 liters of water every day. But outside of that, it's. It's still pretty normal. I probably eat more fast food than I should. But,
Well, I'm going
There
to
are
answer
pills.
that same question.
There is medication.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the new reality for a transplant patient is you are going to be on medication for the rest of your life. But taking pills versus sticking big needles in my arm for dialysis, yeah, bring that on all day, every Sunday.
But I'm going to kind of answer the same question I just asked them for you from my perspective. Because after Kevin and I both graduated OU, and we lost track of each other. We
Yep.
weren't really running together
Yep.
for quite a while. And then this thing came along called Facebook.
Yeah.
And I'm out there, and Facebook has these things where somebody knows somebody who knows somebody, and people start popping up that you knew somewhere, somewhen. This guy was everywhere. It was like, where's Waldo? I mean, every day there was a fair or some type of a ribbon cutting or some type of a this, and he kept popping up. So I knew that he was in the market, and I didn't know that. And we reconnected, and that's when I found out that all of this had taken place. But if your lifestyle is representative, then I should probably go get this done.
Yeah.
Because you are everywhere all the time. You're Mr. Cincinnati.
And I'm not speaking for anybody else here but me. Between the kidney problems and the cancer, of which a couple of years ago I had a reoccurrence.
I remember.
Your perspective changes. Look, it's not news to anybody. You know, we're here and gone in a blink if you look at astronomical time. And the only thing we really, as I learned when I get these diagnoses, is like the only thing you can control is how you react to these things. And so in the 5 years I was sans kidneys and I was doing home hemodialysis 5 days a week for 4+ hours at a time. So it was basically a second job. In the middle of that, my marriage fell apart. So I was the last few years doing it by myself. And at that point, you can't really do much of anything. You don't feel that great. You don't have a lot of energy. So when I got the transplant, and I had a weird issue. My incision wasn't healing right, so I was on a wound vac for a few weeks. When that ended, I didn't honestly at that point know what to do with myself, because my entire existence up till then had been based on the machine and staying healthy and getting to the point where I got the transplant. Then I had the transplant. And prior to being sick, I was heavily involved in the community and volunteerism. And truthfully, I went to a counselor and I said, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now. And she said, what'd you do before? I said, oh man, I was out at theaters, I'd go to Reds games, I'd go to fairs and festivals and hang out with my friends, and I'd do a lot of volunteering. And you know you'd have a great counselor when she just sat there and stared at me. And I went, oh, I'm supposed to do that again, aren't I? That's the answer to my own question. And that's what I did.
And you do.
I started volunteering. I've been in the arts community with jobs and things for a long time. I was on boards, I was on committees. And yeah, I had friends who would go like, I'm perfectly healthy and I don't do any of the things that you do. All I know is this came out of nowhere. My reoccurrence came out of nowhere. It's going to come out of nowhere again. And I don't want to look back, and I certainly don't want to look at Susie and say, wow, I really should have done something with the gift you gave me.
Yeah.
And she, I've told her this, and she's like, that's not why I did it, you know. And I said, no, you're this great little voice to remind me when I'm in the McDonald's drive-thru. I probably shouldn't be.
Get the salad.
It doesn't mean I pull out, but I maybe don't go the next day.
Drives by you.
Yeah. You're the one who gave me this second chance to do something, to live my life to the degree that I want to, and which is one of the reasons I have cursed COVID. It's like it took a year of whatever I've got left away from me, and so now we're cranking it back up. But it's a total perspective change on the reality of you've got here and now, and what comes next isn't totally up to you. So, and Susie's been the same way. She is, she has healthy. She feels. Her whole thing was that was her calling. That she had never married. She never had kids. She was kind of in a point, where she was just kind of getting through. And when this happened, she was determined that we became friends for a reason, and this was that reason. And she, she'll join me on Life Center stuff. We'll go out and talk to people about our story for that reason. That this happens to people. This happens to families, and you can impact it in a way that I still don't know that she fully understands, even though
It's hard to comprehend you just gave somebody another shot at life.
Right. Right. And one of the reasons I started posting all that stuff on Facebook, that was always my signal to Susie. It's like, look, I'm at this. I didn't, call her out all the time. It was just saying, I'm out doing stuff. I'm starting this theater group, and I'm working on this event, and I'm a volunteer coordinator for this gala because somebody asked me to, because I can't say no because I'm afraid Susie will be mad at me. You don't know the power that you have to give somebody back that kind of life.
Well, we're all here today with this really incredible story because, John, you have a need.
Yes.
And you brought that need to your brothers and sisters at 392. Have you heard anything from anyone? Is any of it working at this point?
I've had people tell me that they have called, and whether they're telling me the truth or not, I don't know. But, they all come down and say it's just they're not in the best of shape themselves to be able to donate. So
Now, sitting here, knowing what they know and knowing their story and hearing Kevin's story, was this a good idea?
yes.
Why?
I guess just to put it blunt, to help me get a kidney.
Absolutely.
And I think you can expand on that, if this is going out to the broader AFL-CIO organizations across the country. I think, there's a lot of people that are probably...
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. I know.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here. I'm not even you, and I'm doing it.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, you're.
It's going to help a lot of people.
But that's just it. The folk that we're sending this to, John, the way Bill is. You know the way the brothers and sisters are. I can't help but think this is going to play a role. And what's better is it's not just going to play a role for you. It's going to play a role everywhere it goes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I make one point, because I know this is going out to a lot of places, and Trish and Sharon mentioned it. The idea of exchanges, or what we call paired donations, is countrywide. So if somebody's watching this in Denver and they would like to do something for John, but the traveling back and forth isn't necessarily feasible, go to your local transplant center. They've got people on their list. They've got people who are looking for a kidney. If you do it in name of John, to do that, John gets a boost. John gets some help in that. It could kick off a chain. There was a hospital, I don't remember where it was, but they did 30 transplants from a chain that started with one person saying, I want to give to him, I can't for X reason. We're not a match, we're not geographically together, whatever it was. And it kicked off this chain of donations. Great, if you do this for him, I'll do this for her, boom, boom, boom. Everybody wins. So don't let your geography stop you. If you've got that instinct, that giving instinct that you want to help somebody, find your transplant hospital, talk to them, and get some things started.
There's a person waiting online for a face and a scalp.
Yeah. Yep.
It's amazing you talk about the bionic man, the things that we can in fact replace that go into, God bless them, the grave every day.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense to me.
No.
It doesn't make sense to me.
The medical field is incredible in what they are doing, the technology and the ability that they're over the next 20 to 50 years to hopefully be able to manufacture human organs and be able to help out. But the key is that right now that is not possible, and they need folks that are willing to step up. And the amazing thing about what we're doing here is we're going to reach potentially 2 million union members throughout the United States and Canada. 350,000 of those are actual part of our organization here with the plumbers and pipe fitters and heating and air conditioning technicians and the sprinkler fitters. If 10% of our membership, 35,000 people, were willing to step up and get tested and possibly get on that national registry to be donors, what would that do for you folks that are transplant coordinators. If we could just get 10% of our membership, not to mention 10% of organized labor across the country, 10% of the population, what does that do for folks like John who so desperately need a kidney transplant and people that are in his shoes? What would that do for them?
Oh my, that would really help out a lot and give them a chance at living life again.
Yeah.
And
And you know,
that's huge.
I'm going to be a little unfair for a second. Listen to this. Hear what we're doing. Here's what's going on. John, I'm going to be very unfair to you for a second.
Okay.
Tell me about your family.
These are my brothers. They both had transplants.
Now, rumor has it you're a daddy.
I am a father of a soon-to-be 18-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter.
2-year-old daughter.
Yes.
What's the one thing every daddy of a little girl wants to be there for?
I'll be there for her.
Walk her down an aisle one day?
Yeah.
Not too soon.
Not too soon.
I know you boys in Kentucky, you're shining the gun already, but
Oh, yeah. Sitting there in my underwear.
yeah. I mean, it is unfair to put you on that spot. And we all have reasons to be here. But I don't have this problem today. I'm a fat old man. You know, that's my biggest plight. I'm blessed in every way. But we need to do this for you. We need to do this for the fact that you all needed it. We need to do this for how many across the United States? 120,000? Just makes so much sense.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
John, what would you have them know?
Yeah, no.
What would you have them know? The 12.5 million brothers and sisters out there, just like this gentleman, just like me.
I don't know.
You are a humble man.
Yeah. It's like when I told you when I first met you.
Yeah.
I almost didn't want to do it because I am a private person. I'd rather try to do things on my own. But this is the one thing that I can't. And then to find out recently that my son has polycystic kidney disease, it's almost, breaks my heart almost. Even though he's just 18, he's got a long way to go. And, the medicine and everything else can change in this next 20, 30 years, whatever.
Right.
But he's, he's taking some blood pressure medicine now, so I get him lined up to see a kidney doctor. So,
John,
Well,
that,
I'm going to say what you didn't.
yep,
John needs your help.
yep.
John needs your help.
This is
And
a
120,000 other Johns need your help.
It's a perfect example of community and what we can do for each other, because the Skirvin family is going through something that nobody can handle alone. Nobody should have to handle
No.
it alone.
No.
No matter whether you're John Wayne or Clint Eastwood or anybody else that you think of in that context as being the toughest human beings that you know, Muhammad Ali. Nobody should have to go through something like this alone, and that's why it's so important that we get behind him and his plight and everybody else, and we do what we can do for the ladies here that are doing the transplant coordination and all of this.
Really, thank you for your work. Oh
Yeah,
my
it's-
God.
Yeah, it's
The idea of what you guys do every day and the folks that you serve, it's amazing. It's a wonderful
It's very
thing.
rewarding. It is very
Yeah.
if we could put one song to it, it would be "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother."
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Well, this is, we throw the word solidarity and unity around like it was, a ham sandwich. This is that. This is what that is. This is walking the walk. If people can step up and do this. I want to give you two an opportunity to flagrantly repeat the word several times of what's the organization that is where these folks, you said it several times, you've said it a few times, who is the body, the national body that they want to know to go get? And we will put up the information on the video right about this point right now, so you won't see us in a minute. Who should they be looking for?
Yeah, so I would say you can always start by contacting me. I work at Christ Hospital in Cincinnati. My direct line is 513-585-1440. And from there, and I'll elaborate kind of on what Kevin mentioned earlier, even if you contact me and you don't live here in Cincinnati or local, I can actually arrange the match testing wherever you're located at. And then we can go from there, whether you're a match or not a match, whatever route we decide to take. If you're healthy and you want to move forward, you can go through a local transplant center, near you and still help John.
So if I'm sitting in Denver, I can pick this up and I can dial the number you just gave and talk to you here in Cincinnati.
Yep.
And you can set everything in motion all the way across the country.
Yep.
Yeah, the transplant coordinators and those who work in the transplant system are they're the kindest. They are the most supportive. The folks I volunteer with are more about getting people registered through the DMV, at the Life Center organization, which there are variations of that everywhere. Their whole mission is getting people to sign up to be donors. It's the transplant centers who work with the living donors. So call Tricia and get it going, and they will be kind and gentle and respectful through the whole process.
Follow-up question to the ladies. We've all got busy lives. Everybody's their families. We're busier than ever. Both parents, if both parents are working, kids are playing sports, everything with school and everything else. So everybody has got a very busy schedule that they're dealing with on their own daily basis. What kind of time frame are we talking for somebody that has never called and decided that they wanted to try and be a donor? What kind of time frame is there involved for that person to make that phone call and to get tested? Is it 15 minutes, an hour, a day? What kind of time frame are they looking at?
Yeah, honestly, it's all tailored towards that person. So it might be a 5-minute phone call. Some people call and have 100 questions right off the bat. It could be an hour phone call. So, I always say the donor directs us. So I would say, if I had to throw something out, anywhere from, maybe 3 to 6 months, depending on what medical testing we need to get through. Because again, our main goal is that the donor is going to be just fine for the rest of their life. So I always joke, everybody thinks they're healthy till they meet me. But,
Yep.
Our focus, the transplant team's focus for the donor is on them.
Yeah.
And again, let's say, you have a vacation planned or life, again, it's donor's timeline. So their medical evaluation, their workup is good for a year. So, let's say they go ahead, they move forward and they know, okay, I'm approved, I can do this. We could wait 6 months and then do surgery. Or again, we tailor it towards that person's schedule, that person's life. It's a great thing that they're doing. So, whatever we can do to accommodate their needs, we will absolutely attempt to do.
So I have to tell this story on Susie when you're talking about the donor controls it. We got the okay. We passed all of our tests. We were scheduled for May of 2012. I saw the end of dialysis, and I was thrilled. Susie, not so much, because this was in February when we got the okay. So she called her transplant coordinator and said, May, not going to work. He's been on this machine for 5 years. I want him off sooner. Let's move it up. How soon can we do this? And they moved it a month and a half earlier into April, which was as soon as they could get anybody scheduled. They listened to the donor. It was like,
They're the ones donating this gift of life, so we do let them decide.
yeah. And I was like, you did what?
Some quick thank yous and a little bit of a wrap up here, because I know everybody's got things they got to do today, and it's a Saturday, which we all know is a holy day just by its very nature. I want to thank Kevin.
Thank you.
Because an hour ago, standing in the parking lot, you didn't know if you were going to be okay to do this.
Right.
And once I showed you the donuts, everything went with it. I really appreciate you being up here. Jason, I really, really appreciate it. And just the fact that you stand in here for your brother, that's what it's about.
And Brian, I did want to bring one other thing up, is kind of post-transplant healthcare. And, if the donors do encounter things, how is that covered? Is there any out-of-pocket
Great
costs
question.
for the donors, or how is that taken care of?
Yeah, so any surgical complication is covered under Medicare, basically, or the recipient's insurance for life. So hernia, 5 years down the road. Where it gets a little tricky is obviously if there's other medical conditions or things that come up in the future, then it's just like anything else, right? Could have happened with 1 or 2 kidneys, but definitely any surgical complication is covered.
For life.
So the impact of this should be 0 on the donor
We expect the donor to go back to their normal healthy life.
without
just as
a
they were
loss of
before.
money or anything as a result of it.
Financial or otherwise?
Yep.
That's great.
And that's one thing, again, the team evaluates for. So again, not just making sure you're physically healthy enough, but mentally, financially, we look at all of that. Because again, they're giving such a gift, something they don't medically need to do.
Right.
So we
Right.
want to make sure the whole picture, it's all taken care of, not just, one piece of it.
No greater love, right?
That's exactly
Absolutely
right.
no greater love.
And they will work with the donor consistently to make sure they're comfortable with this. If they have any change of heart, that's perfectly okay. I mean, Susie and I had known each other a long time, so we had that conversation, but every appointment she would have for any physical or meeting with a social worker or with a coordinator, they ask, are you here of your own free will? Are you being coerced? Are you being paid? And I remember after one of her appointments, Susie called me and said, can you please tell them to stop asking me? And what's amazing is they ask that question as they were wheeling her into the surgical suite. And I've discovered, they have this whole series of things that they can tell the recipient so that, like, I wouldn't get mad at Susie if she changed her mind. They would tell me, we just did a blood test, something didn't look right, whatever. Not that I would, but in the big picture.
They could build a cover story.
Right.
Right.
And so the donor is protected in every possible way. And even if they get to that last minute and go, I just can't do this, that's your call. That's your call. And as the recipient, I would go, because I told her, I said, this is huge, man. If you don't want to do this, I get it. So don't feel like by making that call that you have now obligated yourself to anything. You are just information seeking.
So, any of you folks right here, what have we not covered at this point? Is there anything that should be brought up? Anything you want to say? Kevin, Jason, Kevin, John, what would you have them know? What have we not spoken about so far?
I think call that number and just learn more.
Education, right?
I think that's perfect. Call that number.
Call that
we'll
number.
have that number up too. As Jason says it, George is going to put that number up.
Put that number, call that number. The one thing I would say, if you've ever seen dialysis on like a TV show or something, and there's this new one out now called Be Positive, which is a sitcom about, that's not what dialysis is like. If you've got the power to keep somebody off of that, I can't beg you enough. I'm glad it exists. It kept me alive for 5 years, but it's a different kind of being alive. It's sustenance only. It's not a way to spend the short time that we have here. And so don't believe what you've seen on TV, that everybody's chuckling and there's no weird noise. I mean, it's not like it is on TV.
I don't know how you did it for 5 years. I'm
John.
going on 3 months, and it's.
I was going to ask you, if it's not too personal, could you just describe a day in the life of John Skirvin going through dialysis? What you do on the days that you've got to do it, and how it affects you, how you feel, what it takes to get through it.
Well, I do dialysis Monday, Wednesday, Friday, typically from 3 o'clock till 7 o'clock. Right now, I am on disability, so a normal day is just getting up, and if the weather's nice, I try to be outside with my daughter. You know, my son just graduated, so he's sleeping until noon or 1 o'clock. You know, so whenever he decides he's gonna come out of that cave he's got upstairs, but and then I get ready. You know, I'll eat something before dialysis. I learned the hard way not to take my blood pressure medicine before I go in. That just about, I hate to say use the term that killed me, but it my blood pressure dropped so dramatically and it stayed down for a while. But after dialysis, you're sitting there, at least I did, and I think Kevin said the same thing. I'm there for 4 hours, sitting there in a chair. You can get up to use the restroom, but they have to unplug you. You can go to the restroom and you come back, and it takes roughly 15 minutes to unplug you and 15 minutes to plug you back in. So you just kind of sit there and hope you ain't got to use the restroom. And they got TVs there, but like he said, it's not laughing and giggling. I mean, some of the nurses there are having a good time. They're just trying to keep spirits up.
Sure.
But it's. I sit there a lot of time, and like I mentioned to you before, I'm trying to do things on my phone, either watch YouTube or watch what's on TV, and they only got select channels, so it's not the best programming that you're watching. So you kind of keep your mind off of it,
Yeah, I imagine it's a lot
But
of.
the aftermath, for me personally, and I talked to my brothers about a little bit, I feel like I have a hangover, for that night and almost sometimes into the morning, depends on how that session went. Like last week, I nothing changed with my routine, but those 3 days were terrible. I no rhyme or reason why. I think maybe I drank too much water in between sessions, and they were trying to take more off of me to get me back down to my projected weight, but it's not fun.
Mm-hmm. And you get cold.
Yeah.
So dialysis basically is pulling your blood out, cleaning it, putting it back in. So it leaves technically at 98.6 degrees. I'm fairly certain it comes back at about 64 because you are just, and it doesn't, but those few degrees, you're just chilled to the bone. Yeah. It can be 95 degrees outside and you're under blankets and wool socks and sweatsuit, and it wears you out. The body is not built to function that way. That's why we have kidneys. They do all of that work. So he's going 3 days a week for 4 hours at a time. That means that toxins and fluids are building up in his system from the time he's done until the next time he goes. Whereas when you have a kidney, it's filtering and functioning 24/7. So picture that sort of visual of from 7 p.m. Monday night until 3 p.m. or 3:30 by the time you get started on Wednesday afternoon. Everything he eats, everything he drinks, all that toxin is just building up with nowhere to go. That's why the sooner we can get him a kidney that's working 24/7, that's why, when I got mine in, I was like, whoa. See, I didn't have to get up and pee like you did because I had no kidneys at all.
I'm pretty good at going before and I've seen people in there get up and go, and I'm like, man, I think I'd wait. Try and wait, the extra hour or whatever.
Yeah, I never even had that option.
Like that's what Jason, same thing.
And that in itself is a different experience of not making urine.
Yeah.
And it's
because deep in your heart, this ain't right.
Yeah.
This is not doing my body any good.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I think I think we're there.
I would just like to say, for John to get a kidney, on top of the quality of life it would provide him, it also provide him an additional 15 years of life on top of everything.
Yeah.
Dialysis is hard on patients, and it actually will take years off your life if you're on it long enough. So let's
Thanks
blame
for
John and
reminding
kidney.
me. Yeah. But it does, and it will also put him back to work.
Right? Put him back to work.
Bill, I want to give you our out for the most part. You run 392 here. John's a member. There's no one in a better position than you to talk to the brothers and sisters and give them one more call to action on this. I mean, take us out.
I would say to my brothers and sisters at Local 392 and across the greater Cincinnati area and the labor movement and just the general public who's going to see this also, that you have the ability to do what you can, when you can, while you're still here. And I have that same ability. And I would hope that the education that you're hopefully receiving today from this program will encourage you, enlighten you, get you to do research on the not just kidney donation, but donation of organs of any type, and that you will truly consider making the ultimate gift of love for John Scarvin and for other folks that are out there waiting on transplants to save their lives. Do what you can do for their families, for their loved ones, for the community at large, and I think that's our calling. I think that's what we're here for.
Well put. Bill, thank you. Kevin, really appreciate you coming, my friend. John, we're going to get you there.
Yep.
Kevin, Jason, Sharon, Tricia, really appreciate all your time today.
Thank you, Brian.
You're in good hands, dude. You're in the best of hands.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll get you there. Thank you all very much, and thank you. Step up.
Yep.